My husband's mother, Eleanor, looked at me with that familiar smirk across her birthday cake, her face a mask of condescension. "You'll never be as good as Sophie, Mark's ex-lover," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. She had real elegance, real charm. She just got what Mark needed. I pushed my chair back from the dining table, my hands feeling unnaturally calm. "In that case, tell Sophie to start paying your bills. I'm done bankrolling your family." Eleanor's smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of genuine confusion. "What money? We haven't seen a single penny from you." And in that moment, I knew that something had gone terribly, horribly wrong. Before we get into the full story of this financial deception, I want to thank you for listening. If you believe that families should be built on trust, not trickery, please take a moment to subscribe. It's a free way to support these stories and help them find others who need to hear them. Now, let's get back to what was really going on with my money. But first, let's rewind 18 months back to a time when I still believed in the fantasy that you could win over a hostile family with enough patience and generosity. My day at Sterling Capital always began at 7 a.m. sharp. I'd be at my desk before the building's security guard had even finished his first donut, riding the express elevator to the 21st floor. My corner office had a sweeping view of the Chicago skyline, a panorama of glass and steel that represented everything I'd fought for. The sun would glint off the neighboring towers as the city slowly came to life below me. My job was to analyze investment portfolios that were worth more than most people earn in a dozen lifetimes, hunting for patterns in derivative markets and flagging anomalies that could save our clients millions. I could smell financial malfeasance a mile away, a skill that made me invaluable at work. The irony of what was happening in my own home is a burn that still stings. My assistant Clara would bring me an Earl Grey tea in the ceramic mug Mark had bought me for our 4th anniversary. "The Montgomery portfolio is showing some strange activity," she'd say, and I'd lose myself in the complex narratives of spreadsheets, tracking money as it moved through channels it was never supposed to. Mark would usually text around mid-morning, always something sweet about what we should have for dinner or a reminder about our weekend plans with his parents. He worked as a project manager for boutique firms, one of those titles that sounded impressive at parties but resulted in a wildly unpredictable income. Some months, he'd land a major contract and we'd celebrate with champagne and dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants. On other months, I would quietly cover the mortgage, his car lease, and the mounting credit card bills without a word. We'd been married for 4 years, and together for 6. He had a way of making you feel like the center of the universe, with deep brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled and a hand that always seemed to find mine in a crowded room I adored. The way he'd pull me into a dance in the kitchen while pasta was boiling or leave silly notes in my work bag. He made me feel chosen, special. Every Saturday, we made the 50-minute drive out to the suburbs to see his parents. We'd hold hands while listening to whatever true crime podcast he was currently fixated on, but the second our car turned onto their street, a subtle change would come over him. His hand would slide from mine, his shoulders would tighten, and by the time we were walking up the path to their neat little brick house, he was no longer my husband. He was their son. His father, George, would always greet me with a genuine warm smile. "Olivia, you look lovely, as always." He'd take the bottle of Cabernet I brought, the same $20 bottle Eleanor never touched, but I brought anyway out of habit. The bouquet of flowers I'd picked up from the farmer's market would be taken and placed in a vase, with a polite but dismissive nod. Eleanor would be in the living room, surrounded by a shrine of photos documenting every phase of Mark's life, except, of course, the last 6 years that had included me. She'd glance up from her magazine, offering a tight-lipped smile that never came close to reaching her eyes. "Oh, you're here. Mark, darling. Did you hear Sophie just got a huge promotion? She's doing such amazing things with that little art gallery she runs. Remember how she used to organize those wonderful charity auctions? And so it would begin. The Sophie Show, Sophie's trip to Italy, Sophie's volunteer work at the local animal shelter, Sophie's almost supernatural ability to cure Eleanor's migraines just by being in her presence. The woman had been out of Mark's life for 5 years, but her ghost was a permanent guest at every family dinner, a constant silent judgment on my own inadequacies. Sophie made the most divine carbonara. Eleanor would sigh as she picked at the chicken parmesan I'd spent hours preparing. Her secret ingredient was love, I think. Mark would shift in his seat, maybe give my knee a little squeeze under the table, but he never, ever spoke up. He never said, "Mom, Olivia is right here." He never reminded her that the sainted Sophie had cheated on him with his college roommate, the actual reason for their breakup. That messy detail had been conveniently scrubbed from the official Baxter family history. The talk of money started subtly, then became a drumbeat. First, it was just general complaints about their fixed incomes and the rising cost of living. Then came the specific targeted mentions of medical expenses. Eleanor's rheumatoid arthritis required expensive injections. George's heart medication copay was over $400 a month. Their property taxes had just gone up, and George, at 72, had taken a part-time job at a garden center just to keep them afloat. One Tuesday evening, I was buried in a pile of quarterly earnings reports when Mark walked into my home office. He had that look on his face, the one that meant he was about to ask for something he felt guilty about. He perched on the corner of my desk, fiddling with a pen Mom called earlier. Dad's been trying to stretch out his heart medication, skipping doses to save money. I looked up from my laptop, my focus instantly shifting. "That's incredibly dangerous, Mark. He needs to take it every day." "I know," he said, running a hand through his hair, a nervous tic I knew all too well. "They're just completely overwhelmed, Liv. Mom is way too proud to ask for anything, especially from you, but they're in trouble." "How much do they need?" I asked. "Maybe $2,500 a month? Just for a little while until things level out." I looked at his face, and the worry in his eyes seemed so real. They were his parents. And despite Eleanor's constant hostility, George had always been kind to me. "Okay," I said. "We can do that." "There's just one thing," Mark said, his gaze dropping to the floor. "Mom is hopeless with technology. She doesn't trust online banking. And Dad's pride. He'd never be able to accept money from his son's wife. It would kill him. If I could just have you transfer it to my personal account, I can give it to them in cash. Tell them it's from my consulting work. That business is finally taking off." At the time, it made a twisted kind of sense. Eleanor was 74 and still complained that her flip phone was too complicated. George was an old-school guy who insisted on picking up the check even when his credit card was declined, so I agreed. I set up the automatic monthly transfers from our joint savings to Mark's private checking account, meticulously labeling each one in my personal budget spreadsheet, e.g. medical support, Baxter Household Fund. It started at $2,500. Then it became $3,000 when Eleanor needed a new experimental treatment. It wasn't a huge sum to someone who managed multi-million-dollar funds, but it added up. This was what you did for family, I told myself, even a family that used every opportunity to remind you that you'd never be good enough. 3 months into our new arrangement, the transfers were as much a part of my routine as my morning tea. It was a chilly March evening, and we were gathered around Eleanor's dining table, eating a roast beef that was both tough and greasy. The air was thick with the smell of boiled cabbage and the cloying, rose-scented air freshener she used to cover up the scent of mothballs I had to skip my injection again, Eleanor announced, sawing at her meat with a pained expression. "These treatments are so ridiculously expensive," I told George. "At this rate, the pain is better than going bankrupt." My fork paused mid-air. The previous Tuesday, a transfer of $2,800 had left my account, specifically noted as Eleanor's RA treatment. I shot a questioning look at Mark, but he was already deflecting with the skill of a seasoned diplomat. Leo got a new watch, he said, turning to his younger brother, show Olivia the pictures. Leo, who had been unemployed for the better part of a year, eagerly pulled out his phone to show off a gleaming Breitling he'd somehow managed to afford. Got a crazy good deal, he explained, swiping through photos of himself posing with the ridiculously expensive timepiece. Friend of a friend needed some quick cash, Eleanor, seemingly unfazed by the cognitive dissonance of her unemployed son buying a luxury watch while she supposedly couldn't afford her medication, beamed at Leo with a warmth she never showed me. "You deserve nice things, sweetie," she said, patting his arm. "You've had a tough year." The next few weeks were filled with more little inconsistencies. Mark's laptop, which had always been left open on the kitchen island, was now password protected. "New client, very strict NDA," he said when I glanced over his shoulder, cybersecurity firm. "They're super paranoid." His consulting work, always a bit nebulous, was now shrouded in secrecy. Phone calls that he used to take at the dining table were now taken out in the backyard. Better signal out there, he'd claim, even though our reception had always been perfect. The paper bank statements that used to land on the entryway console table started to vanish. I'd see them in the mail stack, but by the time I went to look for them later, they were gone. "I'm digitizing all our records for tax season," Mark explained with that easy, reassuring smile. "You just focus on your high-stakes work, honey. I'll handle the household finances." Our little household finances, which now included thousands of dollars a month flowing out of our savings. Sometimes I'd wake up late at night to an empty space beside me in bed. I'd see the bluish glow from under his office door and hear the faint, frantic tapping of a keyboard. Whenever I'd get up to investigate, the typing would cease. By the time I'd open the door, he'd be scrolling through sports websites or reading the news. "Couldn't sleep," he'd say, smiling that same disarming smile. "Didn't want to wake you." One Sunday in May, George gave us a real scare. We were finishing Eleanor's notoriously dry lemon cake when he stood up to clear the plates and suddenly swayed, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. Sweat beaded on his temples. Mark leaped up and guided him to the sofa while Eleanor fluttered around him, wringing her hands and suddenly playing the part of the doting wife. I'm fine," George insisted, though his hand trembled as he took a glass of water. "Just a long day. I pulled a double shift at the garden center yesterday." "Why are you working so much?" I asked, genuinely baffled. By my own records, we had sent them nearly $12,000 in the last 4 months alone. It should have been more than enough to cover their expenses and his prescriptions. "Bills are bills," George mumbled, avoiding my gaze. I felt Mark's hand on my knee, a firm, warning squeeze. When I looked at him, his face was a blank mask, but his eyes sent a clear message. Drop it. The car ride home was tense and quiet, the only sound the rhythmic thud of the windshield wipers against the spring rain. I watched the water streak across the glass, trying to piece together the inconsistencies. Finally, I couldn't stay silent. "Mark, where is the money going?" "What money?" he asked, his knuckles turning white on the steering wheel. "The money for your father's medication, for your mom's arthritis. $12,000 in 4 months and your dad is working himself to death." "There are other expenses," he said, his voice clipped. "Old debts. Things from before you and I were together." "It's complicated, Olivia. Then uncomplicate it for me." "Just trust me," he said, his voice pleading. "Please, I'm handling it. Trust." It was such a fragile word. The real breaking point came, of all places, at a book club meeting hosted by Chloe, Mark's sister. She'd insisted on having it at our house, gushing about our perfect natural light. On a Tuesday evening, our living room was filled with 7 women, 3 bottles of Chardonnay, and a lot of strong opinions about a celebrity memoir no one had actually read. After the second glass, Chloe had moved on from literary analysis to her favorite topic, family gossip. Her voice drifted into the kitchen, where I was arranging more crackers on a cheese board. "Mark has just been a saint to Sophie lately," she said to her friend Carol. "You know, her gallery has been struggling so much. But that's what family does, right? You help each other out, even exes. That's what makes the Baxters so special. My hand froze over the wedge of Gouda. Carol made the appropriate sympathetic sounds. How long were they together again? Almost 7 years. Everyone was sure they'd get married. Eleanor still has a box of bridal magazines she saved for them. But the timing was just off, you know? Sophie had her art and Mark. Well, Mark found Olivia. The way she said my name made it sound like I was a booby prize Mark had been stuck with. I walked back into the living room, my face a carefully composed mask of polite hostess. "Is Sophie having a hard time?" I asked, placing the cheese board on the coffee table. Chloe's eyes went wide. The wine had made her sloppy. "Oh, just the usual struggles of a small business owner. It's tough out there." Mark mentioned she was struggling. I pressed gently, did he? I mean, maybe, I don't know where I heard it. You know how it is. Facebook, I guess. She was scrambling now, looking at the other women for an escape route. That night, as I lay in bed next to Mark, listening to the sound of his even, untroubled breathing, Chloe's words played on a loop in my head. Family helps family, even exes. Mark has been a saint to Sophie. I thought of the password on his laptop, the hushed phone calls, the missing bank statements, Leo's new watch, George's exhaustion, Eleanor's unaffordable treatments that I was secretly funding. The numbers began to click into place in my mind, just as they did when I was analyzing a portfolio. Money was flowing out. But the problems it was meant to solve were only getting worse. And now, Sophie's name was floating to the surface. I turned to look at Mark's face in the dim light from the window. He looked so peaceful, almost boyish in his sleep. This was the man who had promised to be my partner, my future. But a future, I was beginning to realize, could be built on a foundation of lies. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford after Chloe's wine-soaked confession. I went through the next few days in a fog, my body on autopilot at work while my mind raced. Mark, blissfully unaware, continued his performance as the perfect husband, kissing me goodbye in the morning and texting heart emojis in the afternoon. On Thursday morning, he left early for a supposed pitch meeting with a new client. I watched his car turn the corner, then waited a full 5 minutes to be sure he wasn't coming back. The house felt different now that I was alone with my suspicions. It felt like a crime scene. His laptop was on his desk. He'd become so comfortable in his deceit that he'd gotten careless. I opened it and stared at the password prompt. I tried our anniversary. Nothing. His birthday. Nothing. I tried our dog's name, his mother's maiden name, even Baxter 2022. Then, with a surge of bitter certainty, I typed Sophie 2019, the year they had met. The screen unlocked. My breath caught in my chest as I saw his desktop, a chaotic mess of files and folders. His personal email was already open in a tab. The most recent email was from Eleanor, sent just hours before. Olivia seemed on edge at dinner last night. Keep her happy until my birthday. After that, we can figure out a new plan. My hands were shaking as I scrolled back, uncovering a timeline of conspiracy that stretched back 18 months. Eleanor coaching Mark on exactly what to say to me. Tell her it's for my arthritis. She has a soft spot for health issues. Leo sending updates on his investments, all funded by his brother's brilliant long game. But the file that made my world stop spinning was a Google sheet titled Project Nightingale. The columns were brutally clear. Date, amount from O, actual use, cover story for O. My initial appeared over and over, a testament to my own gullibility. O believed the medication story. O didn't ask any questions about the plumbing repair. O too swamped at work to notice anything. I took a picture of the screen with my phone, then realized I needed to be smarter. I forwarded the entire email chain and the link to the spreadsheet to a private email address I only used for junk mail. One Mark knew nothing about. 23 emails, 14 attachments. One spreadsheet that laid out exactly how my money had been laundered. Of the $52,000 I had sent over 18 months, only about $16,000 had gone to his parents, doled out in small, strategic amounts to keep the story believable. The spreadsheet showed that Sophie had received $18,000, labeled as gallery support and transitional assistance. Leo had gotten $10,000 for investment opportunities, with notes about bad crypto bets and poker debts. The last $8,000 was listed as administrative fees, Mark's commission for running the scam. I leaned back in his chair, the professional humiliation almost as painful as the personal betrayal. I uncovered complex financial fraud for a living. Yet I had been the victim of a simple, grubby con orchestrated by my own husband. The shower was still running upstairs. Mark always took long showers, a habit I once found endearing. I had time. I went into his sent folder. The messages to Sophie weren't love letters. They were something colder, more transactional. This month's payment might be a few days late. Olivia is asking questions. And Sophie's replies were just as chilling in their obliviousness. No worries, Mark. Just tell your trust fund manager I'm grateful for the support. Trust fund manager. They had told Sophie the money was from a fictional inheritance. I started printing everything. The printer Word, a soundtrack to my racing heart. Bank statements, screenshots, email threads. By the time I heard the water shut off, I had a 40-page binder of evidence stashed in my briefcase. When Mark came downstairs, hair still damp, I was sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through the news on my tablet as if it were any other Thursday morning. Gorgeous, he said, kissing the top of my head. Sleep okay? Like a rock, I lied, my eyes fixed on the screen. The rest of the day was an exercise in self-control. After Mark left for the day, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years. I sat in my driveway, the windows rolled down, and spread the printed pages across the passenger seat. With a red pen, I systematically documented the fraud, the emergency roof repair Eleanor claimed she needed. I pulled up city records. No permits had been filed for their address in over a decade. The special cardiac medication for George. A quick call to their local pharmacy confirmed no such prescription had ever been filled for him. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Hope you feel better soon, babe. Love you. I stared at the words that had once been my anchor. Now they were just another tool in his arsenal of manipulation. I texted back a simple, thanks, then blocked his number so I could think. My friend Maya answered on the second ring. We'd been college roommates, and she was now a forensic accountant. A coincidence that suddenly felt like destiny. Olivia, what's up? It's been forever. I need your help, I said, my voice finally cracking. I think my husband and his family have been systematically stealing from me. Oh, honey, she said, get over here now. Maya's downtown apartment was a fortress of calm. I laid my binder of evidence on her glass coffee table and watched her face morph from concern to shock to pure, professional fury. Liv, this is textbook, she said, her fingers flying across her laptop keyboard. This isn't just theft, it's wire fraud conspiracy. When you move money across state lines via electronic transfer under false pretenses, it's a federal crime. Mark could do serious time 5, maybe 10 years. Eleanor and Leo could be charged as co-conspirators. She showed me legal precedents, case files of similar betrayals. You have everything. This is a prosecutor's dream. We spent the next 3 hours building a case file. Maya helped me organize the evidence, draft affidavits, and understand the legal road ahead. She also gave me the advice I dreaded but needed. Do not confront them until you are ready to pull the trigger. Don't give them a chance to get their stories straight, or destroy anything. Eleanor's birthday dinner is on Saturday, I said, an idea solidifying in my mind. The whole family will be there. Maya gave me a grim smile. Public forum, lots of witnesses. That's smart. But are you ready for your marriage to be over, Liv? Because once you do this, there's no going back. I thought about the password. Sophie, 2019. 5 years after their breakup, she was still the key to his digital world. I was just the woman who paid for it. My marriage ended 18 months ago, I said. I just didn't know it. Friday was a performance. I went to work, I analyzed my portfolios, I sat in meetings, all while the evidence binder sat in my locked desk drawer like a time bomb. Mark's texts continued, a stream of oblivious affection. "How's your day? Tacos tonight? Mom is so excited for her party tomorrow." Each message was another twist of the knife. That evening, as I was getting ready for our traditional pre-birthday date night, he came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "You look so beautiful," he whispered, his chin on my shoulder as we looked at our reflection in the mirror. "Mom doesn't deserve to have someone as amazing as you at her party." The sheer audacity of it made me bite the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. Saturday dawned gray and miserable, a perfect reflection of my mood. I chose my outfit with care, a simple but elegant navy sheath dress that Mark always loved. If this was my final performance as the dutiful daughter-in-law, I would at least look the part. The drive to the suburbs was suffocating. Mark chattered on about his fictional clients and the big deals that were just around the corner. "Thank you for being so patient with all of this," he said, squeezing my hand. "I know Mom can be a lot." 4 years of a lot, I said softly. "It'll get better," he promised. "She just needs more time." Time. As if 18 months and $52,000 wasn't enough, Eleanor opened the door wearing her Sunday best, a floral dress that did nothing to soften her severe expression. Her face lit up when she saw Mark, then her smile tightened when she saw me trailing behind him. "Mark, my darling birthday boy," she chirped, pulling him into a long theatrical hug. "Olivia, you made it. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Eleanor." The house was decorated with cheap streamers, and the good china was set on the table. It wasn't just a dinner, it was a production. Leo was on the couch, showing off his new watch. Chloe and her husband Tom arrived moments later. Chloe hugged everyone but me, offering a vague air kiss in my general direction. "Sophie sent a card," Eleanor announced, holding up a pink envelope as if it were a winning lottery ticket. So thoughtful. Even with her gallery being so busy, she remembered her other mother. She read the card aloud, each word a poison dart aimed directly at me. "Dearest Eleanor, happy birthday to a woman who has been a second mother to me. Thank you for all your support through this difficult period. Love always, Sophie." Mark's jaw was tight. He knew this was too much, but he just stood there, opening wine while I set out appetizers. Dinner was Eleanor's magnum opus, a relentless barrage of stories about Sophie's brilliance, each one a direct comparison to my perceived failures, Sophie's artistic talent, Sophie's impeccable taste. "Unlike some people," Eleanor said, looking right at me, "who only understand money." The cake arrived, a cheap grocery store sheet cake with "Happy 75th Eleanor" written in garish purple icing. As we sang, her eyes were locked on mine, a predator enjoying the final moments before the kill. After she blew out the candles, she set down her knife and turned to me, the room falling silent. "You know, Olivia," she began, her voice syrupy sweet, "I've been thinking about what makes a good match. Some people just click. They have a natural rhythm." Mark grabbed my hand under the table, a warning. Sophie understood Mark on a fundamental level. She made him a better man just by being near him. "Mom," Mark said weakly, but she held up a hand. "I'm just being honest. Olivia deserves honesty, don't you, dear?" Her smile was a razor. "You try so hard, we can all see that. But you'll never be Sophie. You'll never measure up to what they had." The room held its breath. Leo was smirking. Chloe was examining her cake with intense focus. George was staring at his plate. And Mark just sat there holding my hand, saying nothing. That's when I heard my own voice, cool and steady. "Then tell Sophie to pay all your bills. I'm done funding your lifestyle." The words detonated in the quiet room. Eleanor's triumphant expression shattered into confusion. What money? We never got a single dollar from you." The lie was so audacious, so complete, that for a split second I questioned my own sanity. But then I saw the color drain from Mark's face. I saw Leo's smirk disappear. I saw panic flash in Chloe's eyes. With deliberate slowness, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Should we review the transfers, Eleanor? Or would you rather we all pretend you haven't been receiving money from me for the last year and a half? I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, but her voice was thin. January 2022, I began, my tone as level as if I were presenting in a boardroom. $2,800 for Eleanor's arthritis treatment. February 2022, $2,600 for household repairs. March 2022, $3,000 for George's emergency medication. I read each month, each amount, each lie. April, May, June. The numbers piled up as the faces around the table fell. Eleanor's confusion curdled into fear. Leo put his beer down with a trembling hand. Should I go on? 18 months, Eleanor. A total of $52,000, all sent to Mark for your supposed expenses. George's coffee cup clattered in its saucer. His voice was a raw whisper. Mark. Did you give us Olivia's money? The question hung in the air. Mark's mouth opened and closed like a fish. It's complicated, he finally choked out. Uncomplicated, I said, my voice like ice. Mark looked around the table for an ally and found none. Sophie came to me, he started, the words spilling out. Her gallery was about to go under. She was going to lose everything. So you gave her my money, I stated. It wasn't supposed to be permanent, he cried. Mom and we just thought she needed a bridge. We always believed she and I were endgame, and you were just... I was what, Mark? He couldn't look at me. Convenient, a placeholder, someone who could fund the transition. Transition, the word that defined our entire marriage as a stopgap. You knew, I said, turning to Eleanor. Her face had hardened into a mask of defiance. You orchestrated all of this. Sophie and Mark belonged together. She spat, her voice cold. You were a temporary solution, Olivia. You're too career-focused, too analytical. Sophie understands what's important. She understands family. What he needed, apparently, was my bank account. Your money was the least you could do, Eleanor shot back. All pretense gone. I told Mark exactly how to play you. What stories would work? We had meetings about it. Olivia responds well to health scares. Use that angle more. Tom, Chloe's husband, had muted the TV. The entire world seemed to have gone silent to listen to Eleanor's confession. You coached your son to defraud his wife? George's voice was hoarse with disbelief. I coached him to secure his future, Eleanor declared. Sophie is his soulmate. You were just a well-funded stepping stone to get her back on her feet so they could finally be together. Mom, stop, Mark begged, but she was on a roll. 3 years we've been planning this. 3 years of tolerating you at my table, sitting in the chair that should have been Sophie's. But we knew it would end. Once Sophie was financially stable, Mark was going to leave you for the woman he truly loves. The words were meant to destroy me, but instead, they set me free. The lies were finally over. George scraped his chair back and stood up, his body trembling with rage. You let me work double shifts? You let me risk my health skipping my heart pills? All while you were stealing from Olivia to give to that woman? It's marital assets, Mark protested weakly. I had a right to lie, a right to commit wire fraud. I pulled up the screenshot of the Google sheet. Should I read from your spreadsheet, Mark? Told O the plumbing was shot, money actually for Sophie's rent. Or how about Dad's heart med story worked like a charm, O didn't even blink. Leo, silent until now, jumped up so fast he knocked over his beer. This is crazy. Mom said the money was from Mark's consulting. She said he was making a killing. A killing? I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. Your brother hasn't landed a real client in over a year. That watch on your wrist? That was paid for with money I thought was keeping your father alive. Leo's hand flew to his Rolex. Mom said Mark had a crypto tip for me. I was going to pay it all back. $10,000, Leo. You siphoned off $10,000 that was meant for your father's health. I didn't know, he squealed. Mom handled everything. She said it was family money, that we all deserved a piece. A piece of what? George roared. A piece of theft? A piece of grand larceny? Melissa finally spoke, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know about the money, I swear. But I knew Mark was meeting Sophie for coffee, sometimes dinner. I just assumed Olivia knew every client meeting, every late night at the office, all lies, every week? I asked Mark. He nodded, miserable. We had to coordinate, he mumbled. It was business. Business, I repeated. Is that why your laptop password is her name? His head snapped up. You went through my computer? Sophie 2019. Not very creative, Mark. Eleanor stood, trying to reclaim her power. None of this matters. You can't stop destiny, Olivia. You were always just a placeholder. Yes, Eleanor, you've made that very clear. The convenient fool who paid for everything while you all laughed at me? We never laughed, Mark said. No? What about the family group chat, the Baxter Inner Circle, the one where you all discussed how to manage Olivia? His silence was a confession. I reached into my bag and pulled out the binder Maya had helped me prepare. You want to know what this is? I said, dropping it onto the remains of Eleanor's birthday cake. This is 18 months of documented, verified wire fraud. Eleanor reached for it, but I put my hand on top. Not yet. First, you're all going to listen. I flipped open the binder. Email from Eleanor to Mark, February 12th. Tell Olivia the furnace is broken. She won't check with the landlord. Email from Mark to Leo, March 3rd. Mom says you need 10 grand. Olivia thinks it's for Dad's heart, so play along if she asks. You had no right, Eleanor began. I have every right to read emails about a conspiracy to steal my money. I flipped to the next section. Bank statements. $52,000. My attorney, yes, Eleanor, I have an attorney, calls this overwhelming evidence of a conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Attorney, Mark whispered Maya Singh, specializes in financial crimes. She's reviewed everything and is waiting for my call. One word from me, and this becomes a federal matter. The room was dead silent. Federal, Leo breathed, his face ashen. When you use electronic transfers for fraudulent purposes, it's a federal crime Mark is looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. You and Eleanor, as co-conspirators, could face 3 to 5. Prison? Leo whispered, staring at his expensive watch as if it were a pair of handcuffs. But Mom said, You took the money, Leo. You were in the group chat. That's conspiracy. You're bluffing, Eleanor sneered, but there was no conviction in it. We're family, and prosecutors love family drama, especially with this much of a paper trail. But here's the part you're going to love, I said, pausing for effect. Sophie knows everything. That's what truly broke them. 2 days ago, I sent Sophie the screenshots of your spreadsheet, the emails, everything. Would you like to hear her response? I pulled up the email on my phone, reading it aloud. Olivia, I am utterly horrified. Mark told me the money was from a family trust left by his grandmother. I had no idea it was yours. I am prepared to return every cent I can and testify to what he told me. No woman deserves this. She's lying, Mark cried. Anna has more integrity in her little finger than your entire family. She's already sent me records of every payment. She's ready to sign an affidavit. Eleanor collapsed into her chair, her regal posture gone. But the best part, I continued, is the texts Sophie sent me. From Mark. Don't worry about paying it back. My trust fund is huge. Janet doesn't know about it. She might feel weird. I looked right at Mark. You lied to all of us. The room was a tableau of ruin. So here's what happens now, I said, laying out the documents Maya had prepared. Option 1. Mark signs this post-nuptial agreement, acknowledging the $52,000 debt. Eleanor and George sign affidavits confirming they never received the money for the stated purposes. Leo signs a repayment plan. You all cooperate, and this remains a civil matter. And option 2? Eleanor asked. Option 2 is I call Maya. She calls the U.S. Attorney's Office, and you explain to federal agents how you orchestrated a multi-year fraud scheme. I pushed 3 documents across the table. This is extortion, Eleanor whispered. No, I said. This is consequences. Mark picked up the pen, his hand shaking. If I sign, we divorce. You repay the money, you stay out of prison. He signed. His elegant signature, once a symbol of our love, was now the scrawl of a defeated man. Eleanor signed, her hand trembling. Kyle signed, desperate for it to be over. George was the last. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with shame. Olivia, I am so sorry. I know you are, George. You're the only one here who is. I gathered the documents, placing them back in their folder. I stood up, my purse in my hand, feeling lighter than I had in years. Wait, Eleanor said, a final pathetic attempt. Family doesn't do this to each other. I turned at the door and looked at the wreckage of her party. Family doesn't steal from each other either, I said. Happy birthday, Eleanor. Walking out into the drizzling rain, my phone immediately started buzzing. Mark, Chloe. A group chat I'd never been part of, suddenly desperate for my attention. I turned the phone off and sat in my car, the patter of rain on the windshield the only sound. The drive home felt like a dream. Maya was waiting on my porch with a bottle of good wine. I figured you'd need this, she said. How'd it go? They all signed, I said, holding up the folder. Mark showed up at midnight, using his key for the last time. He found me and Maya in the living room. Olivia, please, we have to talk, he begged. Talk to my attorney, Maya said, handing him a business card, and leave your key on the counter. This is my house, too, he said. Not as of Monday, I replied. You loved me, he said, his voice small. I loved the man I thought you were, I corrected. You love my salary. Monday morning, the divorce was filed. My boss, hearing a sanitized version of events, offered me time off. No, I said, I need to work. I need normal. He looked at me for a long moment. A senior partner position is opening up. You should go for it. Mark was served that afternoon. He called relentlessly until I blocked his number for good. Then Eleanor started, leaving rambling, tearful, then threatening voicemails. I saved them all for Maya. By the end of the week, $30,000 from Mark's liquidated 401k appeared in my account. A memo read, partial repayment. The biggest surprise came 3 weeks later, a call from Sophie. Olivia? I know this is strange, but can we meet? We met for coffee. It was awkward for about 5 minutes until she said, so we both got tangled in the Baxter web of dysfunction, and we both started laughing. She showed me years of emails from Mark, a long, pathetic history of lies. He'd lied to her, too, about everything. Eleanor told me you cheated on him, I said. Sophie snorted. He cheated on me. With my best friend, Eleanor helped him cover it up. We sat there for 3 hours, 2 women untangling the lies of one man and his toxic mother. As we left, Sophie said, we should do this again, like a support group for survivors of the Baxters. Our first official dinner was at a fancy Italian place. To Eleanor's matchmaking, Sophie toasted, raising her glass. She wanted me back so badly she forgot to ask if I wanted him. Word got around Mark's consulting business imploded. He moved back into his childhood bedroom at 35. According to Chloe, who still texted me gossip, Eleanor was miserable. Without my money, their lifestyle crumbled. George, however, showed true remorse. He sent me a handwritten letter. Dear Olivia, there are no words. What my family did is unforgivable. I am so deeply sorry. I sent him information on Medicare assistance programs. He never asked. I just did it. For him. The anger faded, replaced by something else purpose. Anna and I started a small online group, The Ledger, for women in financially abusive relationships. We shared my story, our templates, our knowledge. It grew from 12 women to hundreds, then thousands. My promotion to senior partner came through. I celebrated by buying a new condo downtown. All mine moving day was a joy. Anna and 2 women from The Ledger helped me paint the living room a serene blue. In my new life, I found a new kind of family. Real revenge wasn't the confrontation. It wasn't watching their lives fall apart. It was this: building a life they could never touch, transforming my pain into power. My phone buzzed. A new member notification for the Ledger, another woman finding her voice. I thought of Mark and Eleanor trapped together in that little house, their grand plan in ruins. Then I closed the notification and started making dinner in my own kitchen, in my own home, in my new, beautiful life. Eleanor had said I would never be as good as Sophie. She was right. I was better. I was free. If this story of taking back power had you cheering, please hit that like button. My favorite part was when Olivia pulled out her banking app and started reading the transfers out loud. What was yours? Let me know in the comments below. And for more stories of justice and revenge, make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. End of story.